Why was the secret? Make money out of it. Very good. She wants to make money out of it. So, what should she do? She should make a shvur that he will not reveal. It's working. Thank you, Moshe. A shvur that he won't reveal. It's very strange. He made a shvur to Hashem, I will not reveal. And then he went the next day and he spoke in public what the medication was after making a shvur. The Shami says, the Rashi brings, many others bring it, two versions what happened to this lady. One version she committed suicide, she lost her job. Another version she became a Kiyovus. Rashi says, and others say this, not just him, I have to have his sefer. Why did she become a Kiyovus? She realized she was just giving Rabbi Yechanan and money making tickets. She gave him a sole provision of how to heal. What does he go and do with it? He publicizes it. Why? Because Rabbi Yechanan loved Klal Yisrael. So therefore, when she saw that that's how Yid and treat each other, she said, I want to become a Yid. Okay. The mice made a shvur. How could you do such thing? The shvur was, I will not reveal it to Hashem. But to Klal Yisrael, I'll reveal it. It was a twist on the words. He said the words in the incorrect manner. And at the end of the day, it's Chil Hashem. She thought that she would make the shvur correctly. The Magdalene, he revealed it to her that straight away after he made the shvur, straight away after she told him, he said to her, by the way, I tricked you, and I'm going to now reveal it to everybody. My of today. So what was the secret ticket to making money? That you should be able to heal anybody that has tzvina. We've got a few versions. Mace oil, water from yeast, shemen zayis, olive oil, melech and salt. Yoma omas oil, gufa yeast itself, shemen zayis, melech, olive oil and salt. You take the feather of a duck, and at the bottom there's a bit of marrow where it connects to the bone. You extract the marrow, and then you wipe it either on the temples of the head, according to Rashi, or according to the Meiri on the gums. I did all of these things, so I still didn't get better. Adam this out told me Isaac Shaisa to say, so take olive pips to the molu till so they haven't grown to be a third. The Korinu ben Noah burn them in the fire, more on a new spade. Put it across the entire row of teeth. Of the I did it with so I got better. In my hava had the person get this terrible illness of tzfina. Very hot bread made out of wheat. Shiur cast at the house or left over fish which is cooked in its own oil with flour. Both of these things are not healthy if it's left over from the day before. My simone, how does a person know that he's got this illness? He puts something on his teeth, and he gets blood from across all the gums. The person puts something on the one tooth and gets blood from all the gums, is the guy has got sefina. And if it's got sefina, we're going to see that out of Mechal Shabbos and other things because it's a dangerous illness. He did this on Shabbos for Itzi. How could he do so? Now we have a rule in Shabbos. What's the rule on Shabbos? Anything which is internal, we are chayshish that it is b'koach nefesh. Any illness which is internal, we are chayshish is b'koach nefesh. So therefore, since it's finishes in the stomach, even though the beginning of the teeth is not internal, it's considered external. There's machlekes back teeth if that's internal or external, which the law brings it. But this, since it finishes off in the stomach, is considered an internal illness. Come on. Now this is a very big problem. I'm going to go through it fast so I get to try and clear as possible. In our Mishnah, the Chachamim came along and said that somebody gets bitten by a rabid dog, he must not eat the lobe of the liver. Why not? Because it's not a good medication. Came a Maaseh ben Chosh and says, yes, he's allowed to. Adds a Maaseh ben Chosh that if a person has tzvinna, he's allowed to take medication. The question which I asked you when we did the Mishnah was, this second statement of Maaseh ben Chosh, is that something which the Chachamim agree to or not? If the Chachamim didn't agree, Yochet v'Rabim halacha k'Rabim, so what would the halacha be? You would not be allowed to mechal Shabbos for an illness in the teeth because we passed like the Chachamim. If Maaseh ben Chosh made another statement which the Chachamim never disagreed with, so Rabbi Yechanan is okay. The fact that Rabbi Yechanan did it, says the Gemara, can you do such a thing? How can you follow a Yochid against the Rabbim? Omale, what did he reply to him? That the Chachamim only argued with him regarding the dog, but they never argued with him about this. With this, they agreed with him, so it's not a machlokas. So it comes out that the second statement of Maaseh ben Chosh is not an argument. Everybody agrees with it. It says, well, Lema Messiah. Mishach Yokun, the article translated as jaundice. You give him the donkey's meat. Mishnoshra Kelev Shoit, Machinos Mechatzakovit, should they give him the lobe of the liver? Vachosh Bepimatin and Sam Beshabbos in Mas Melchosh. Mas Melchosh makes 3 statements. Jaundice, eat the meat of a donkey. Rabid dog, eat the liver. Medication, illness in the mouth, put in the medication. In these, there's no reform. The words be'elu is spare. You should have just said there's no reform. What's it be'elu? Be'elu limute mai. This is not a medication. This is not medication. What's the this? Ma'alav limute sam. What they were saying is the first two, the rabbit dog and the donkey and the jaundice, that doesn't work. But the last one is okay, which would support Rabbi Yochanan's position that what? That the illness of the teeth was something that everybody agrees with. Says, well, no, there's another illness called suruchni, which the article translates as quinsy, that they used to do bloodletting, and there they agree with Masim and Chorosh, but not regarding this. And then Rabbi Yochanan's got no way to support himself. Why? Another 3 medications, or 3, which some of them were repeated from Masim and Chorosh, but Kizadam and Suchoni v'Shabbos, you had to do bloodletting for Sachuni. You give him from the liver. The simple way to say be'elu, these, is always referring to the latter. So the latter one is the liver and the medication and the teeth. But the first one they agree with. What says you've got no proof. That means, very, very briefly, the Masim and Chorosh came along with a few different medications, actually 4 together if you add them all up, for the teeth, for jaundice, for liver, for the other one was jaundice. The 4 medications. That was bulmus. That wasn't the Masim and Chorosh. That was the Chachamim. And the Chachamim say we agree with some of them we don't. Now Rabbi Yochanan took the medication on Shabbos with Sfinna. So that seems to hold that he held that the Chachamim agree with Masim and Chorosh. But the Gemara keeps trying to prove whether they did or didn't. And each time the Gemara says you've got no proof. Because when they said to him, Be'elu in this is not a before, the question is this to exclude what? We don't know. There's no definitive proof what they do agree, what they don't agree with. It says well, Pitaladon Beis, top of the line. A woman who's expecting that smelled something, we give her to eat until she restores herself. We give him from the liver. Again, 3 medications for one who's expecting. A person gets bitten by a dog, and a person's got an illness in the teeth. This we agree with, not the other ones. Now, which one do they not agree with? Anybody? Let's work them out. Do they not agree with by Uba Shavicha, a woman is expecting? That can't be. How can that be that they don't agree by the woman is expecting? Because that was a previous Mishnah which nobody argued. It was a previous Mishnah, the woman was expecting, we give her teeth, and then nobody discussed it. There was no discussion about it. Maybe they don't agree with the so which one do they must agree with? Which one do they disagree with? That's what one says. That we don't need to teach us that they agree with it, because that's a clear Mishnah. So there's nobody that disagrees about the expecting woman. So for that, you don't need the Chachamim's agreement. It's obvious they agree. It must be regarding the medication of the teeth. Maybe they agree to the wild dog. Maybe that's the one. Again, there's 3 statements of Masim and Chorosh. Expecting woman, a woman gets bitten, a man gets bitten by a wild dog, and a person's got an illness in the teeth. With one of them, they agree. Says the Chachamim can't be they agree with one of the Ubra, the Muberes. That's obvious. So there's 2 left they could agree with. Either they're getting bitten by a wild dog, or the one who's got illness in the teeth. So the Gemara says it must be that they agree with one who gets the teeth. Maybe they agree to the wild dog.
They already disagreed.
They already disagreed where? In our Mishnah, clearly it says that they disagreed about the wild dog. So it can't possibly be that they agree to the wild dog. So the 3 statements that they agree with, the only one they could be agreeing with is the one of the teeth. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan was right when on Shabbos he went and took medication for his teeth, because that is the something that they agree with. You can prove it from our Mishnah. Why? Somebody's got illness in his mouth, can put medication on Shabbos. They don't argue. If they really argued, if the Chachamim disagreed on both points, the Mishnah could have written it in a much more clear and concise manner. The Mishnah starts off, don't eat from the lobe of a dog when the person's being bitten. Came a massive Chosh says, yes, you can. Adds a massive Chosh, if a person's not well in his teeth, he can take medication. If the Chum disagreed to both, but massive Chosh should have said both statements, and then the Chum should have disagreed. The fact that they disagreed only in the beginning, and then he says, V'oid, is a raya that second statement was never disagreed about, and that's how we pass that something that has tzfina is allowed to take medication on Shabbos, just like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. Now, Mishnah Kai is something Safik Nefashos Ru. Why do we need to add that Safik Nefashos Deiches Shabbos? He already told us that Safik is Deiches Shabbos. Even if it's going to Mechalel 2 Shabbos, that means the doctor said, the Gemara explains, going to do the time the Yomi. We have covered the Shabbos. I mean, that means if a person's being told on Shabbos, you need medication for 8 days, he's allowed, and the medication requires Chilul Shabbos, he's allowed to start on Shabbos, even though it's going to be Mechalel 2 Shabbos, even 2 Shabbos is a Teichim Pekuach Nefesh. Even Pekuach Nefesh Teichim in 2 Shabbos. The Rishash discusses this Gemara. What exactly is the Chiddush over here? The Rishash is one of the only Meforshim that's on every daf in Shas Kemat, except for 8 daf. Any 8 daf, and the Rishash doesn't say anything. But the Rishash always writes very, very short. If I'm not mistaken, this Rishash is the longest Rishash in Shas. If you look at it, the Rishash discusses, what's the Chiddush? You would have thought that 2 Shabbos is not Deicha. He says, if the person can wait till the Nacht, so why Mechal Shabbos? If he can't wait, so what would you have thought? That one Shabbos you can Mechal, 2 not, Mechatesa. And the Rishash discusses it at great length. He says one interesting point is that like this, we're talking about somebody that he's got a big arichas. Okay, I'll tell you what Rashi says very, very, very briefly, and then we'll leave it as that. Rashi says that the chiddush is that we don't say delay. It means like this: if a person is hungry on Yom Kippur, by the way, Rashi writes it's big of a chiddush. The doctor says we should know that you're going to have to eat on this Yom Kippur. You're going to have to eat. There's no way you're going to fast on Yom Kippur. You might have to eat by mincha, you have to by Menira, you're going to have to eat. Rashi Paskans, they should wait until he has to eat. He shouldn't start eating breakfast time. Because at the moment he can survive, when he needs to eat, he should eat. But he says, but this Gemara is not about eating, it's about doing Chilul Shabbos. Chilul Shabbos, we don't say the same logic. And he goes through, this is what the Chilul of the Gemara is. That by Chilul Shabbos, we say that if the doctor says, I know you're going to have an operation on Shabbos. But you can have it at 9 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock in the afternoon. You can have it 9 o'clock in the morning. That is no difference. Okay. That's the chiddush of the second Shabbos. You're allowed to heat up hot water. Again, Mr. Alan. You might thought we should wait not to be to Shabbos. That we do. You're allowed to heat up hot water on Shabbos for chayla. Bein la'ashkos, whether to give him to drink. Bein la'havoisei, whether to wash him. I just want to say this very briefly. I've seen many Meforshim mention this. A very, very interesting Maggid Mishnah. By the way, if you ever want to know Hilchos Shabbos, where's the halachas of Pekuach Nefesh and Hilchos Shabbos? Which simon is it? Wait to remember it. I was once walking with Vincent Vino. He's a Rav for She'eres Yisrael in Mamot. And he once said, he used to say to me, it was a chat, he said, one of the things he said to me, it's very easy to remember, it's Simon Shin Chav Ches. All of Hilchos Shabbos, Pekuach Nefesh is Shin Chav Ches. How do you remember it? Shin Chav Ches stands for Shabbos Koyach. You have to have Koyach on Shabbos. Shin Chav Ches is all the Hilchos Pekuach Nefesh. And if you look at Shin Chav Ches, there's a very, very long Bia Halacha, a famous Bia Halacha, where he discusses a Maggid Mishnah. The Maggid Mishnah came along with a huge chiddush that when somebody is in matzav of danger on Shabbos, not only allowed to mechal Shabbos to make him better, you're allowed to mechal Shabbos to make him more comfortable. Anything which would make him more comfortable if it would not be Shabbos, anything that he needs, even if it's something which is not Pekuach Nefesh, you're allowed to mechal Shabbos. And the Mishnah the Halacha discusses at great length, do we pass like this Maggid Mishnah or not? And he finishes off that we do not, but that if a person is not sure whether it's a Pekuach Nefesh or not, he can use the Maggid Mishnah as a tzuruf. That means according to Maggid Mishnah, remember, they discussed this. Let's say a woman just given birth, and she's a big coffee drinker, tea drinker, whatever that person may be, English or American, whatever it may be. Can you be mechal Shabbos to make her a coffee? What would you say?
According to this, you say yeah.
According to Maggid Mishnah, yes. Why? Because even though it's not p'koach nefesh, she can certainly survive. Hot water is just as tasty. But for her, it is geschmack to have it. My Mishnah says, I should know that the Briskavov, the Gviz and Alavamba, Paskins like the Maggid Mishnah, the Briskavov, wherever he thinks being Machmir, Paskins like this Maggid Mishnah, and he would allow people to Mechal Shabbos for something that makes them feel better. Anyway, to cut the long story short, and again, others discuss this, the Savi. What's going on over here? Without to heat up water, Bein Lashkiskim to drink Bein Lahavoiso. Bashas Lahavoiso means to wash them. What do you mean to wash them? What are we talking about? If it's B'koach Nefesh, they don't get a bath. So what's the chiddush? If it's not b'koach nefesh, so why are you washing them? Is a riot to the Maggid Mishnah that we're talking about something that's not b'koach nefesh, but they're desperate for a hot shower, and in a matzah of b'koach nefesh, one is allowed to remake. That's one of the riots to the Maggid Mishnah. So the Beis is on the Shabbos ublevad, on the Shabbos acheres in for next Shabbos we don't wait, and the mechavim miyad they stop the first Shabbos they stop Shabbos zu and the Shabbos acheres. Even the next Shabbos, some people change the girsa because it's a bit repetitive. You shouldn't use a goy. So if you look in top Tosfos, let's just do two more a few more words. You should use Gedolei Yisroel. So look at top Tosfos. You shouldn't use a goy because goy might be lazy. So you're better off using a yid because yidden are not lazy. So it's better to use a yid. The Meiri writes a different chesh, but Shmuel mentions the Meiri. What's wrong with using a goy? The point of using goy is like this: that if you use a goy, an onlooker will say to himself, "I know I used a goy because it's better to use a goy." The next time he will look for a goy, even when there's a yid available and it's taking a long time, and then he could come to koach nefesh. So he might always look for a goy, and there might not be a yid available. The nafkamina would be: what happens if the yid and the goy are both as good as each other? Both are just as efficient. According to Tosfos, you should use the goy because the goy is just as efficient. According to me, you shouldn't use the goy. Why shouldn't you use the goy? Because somebody else might come to a mistaken conclusion, and the Shmuel brings this as a shayla. It's not machriya. What should you do if you've got a goy and a yid both equally efficient? Should you use the goy or the yid? Also, the Shmuel mentions that the day Gedolei Yisroel. The simple translation Gedolei Yisroel means adults. It doesn't mean Gedolei Adol. It doesn't mean you have to go look for B'lashiv to make something better. But he brings that the Ravad and others say faked. You should use Tamidei Chachamim that thereby to emphasize the message that P'koach Nefesh is Doich Shabbos. So two translations Gedolei Yisroel. You shouldn't say Yasik Vom Malolu V'Noshiva Pikutim. You shouldn't use women and kutim. But you can include them for another opinion. So over here, there's different girsos. The Rosh has different girsos. And it's a big problematic. First of all, like this: why shouldn't you use women? Why should you use women? Again, different explanations. What's the problem with women? So then you should say, should use Amaratzim. No, maybe says that if you use a woman, the woman will think to herself, I know why you're using me, because really you're worried about P'koach Nefesh Shabbos, and using me because you think that's also terrible. And then she won't do it properly. So therefore, there's a chashash by using a woman that she will think to herself that really P'koach Nefesh is not doing chashash. So Rashi explains a very interesting pshat, and over here we've got a Bach, the Bach Ois Aleph, if you've got to the side of the Gemara, which disagrees with Rashi very, very occurrence. But let's just see Rashi. If you've got the Rashi, and I want to see if without reading the Bach, you can tell me why he disagrees with Rashi. If you've got the Rashi, it's 10 lines down of the narrow lines. And we start from the Das Acheres. Going. Two people say that this chayla needs medication. Three say you don't need it. And a woman or a goy, a kuti say needs. We can use the woman and the kuti as another opinion to make it equal. Why does the Bach not agree with Rashi? Come on, somebody should say something. You said it almost. You got to. Yesterday about 2 against 100. Oh. You got it right. Chaim, the hot water. I explained to you what the problem with Rashi is. What did Rashi say? Bemis, this Rashi is so difficult that everybody struggles. Rashi says you've got 2 doctors say you should, 3 doctors say you shouldn't. So the problem is, what should you do? So then you can use the woman's opinion as a third to counterbalance, and then you've got 3 against 3. If you read the whole Bach, we haven't got time. The Bach says, what's Rashi talking about? When it's 2 against 100, makes no difference. Because once it's a matter of Sophic nefashos, it makes no difference. If you remember, we said yesterday that if it's 1 against 2, then since 2 is Eidus and 1 is not, then we listen to the 2, not the 1. So the Bach said maybe Rashi made a mistake. Maybe Rashi meant 1 against 2, and that's what Rashi meant. That if you got 1 doctor says it needs, 2 doctors say you don't, then the woman can be mitzvah with the 1 to help it to be 2 against 1. Then that's a big chiddush, because when it said 1 against 2, you don't listen to the 1 because it's Eidus against. So maybe now that you've got the woman who's not really kosher Eidus, so that's the chiddush. But there are many explanations over here. And as I said, the Rosh translates it completely different. He says we're discussing a different pshat. The Rosh says we don't use women because we don't want people to think that it's, so to speak, not a good thing to be doing. Okay. Tono abono. Mefakchim pikuach nefesh b'Shabbos. We do pikuach nefesh b'Shabbos. V'azoris has meshuach. The quicker, better. Ve'intzach litu shus b'beis. Now we're going to have this phrase a few times. The phrase is hazoris. The one who does it quickly as a meshuach is good, and he does not need to ask beis. The question always is going to be that this phrase is repetitive. If I say to you, the one who does it quicker the better, and then I say it doesn't need to ask permission for basin, of course not. He said the quicker the better, of course it needs to ask permission for basin. The Gemara every time, without explaining itself, Rashi says, this is what the Gemara was bothered every time. The Gemara finds a case to tell you that it's a chiddush. So again, each time the question is the double expression, and each time the Gemara gives a different answer. Again, V'azor is if you see a person, a baby in the sea, you're allowed to spread out a net and to bring him out. V'azor is a shubach v'etzel l'toshos v'beis. The chiddush of the second statement is that even if you're hunting for fish at the same time, it's still okay. You see a child falling into a pit. You can pull out a piece of the ground, and that makes his steps to go down. Again, the double expression is spare. Even though you're creating steps for future. You saw doors locked in front of a child. You break it, and you take out the child. You don't ask permission for basin. Again, the same question, the double expression. Even if your intention is to create firewood, you're allowed to put out a fire, and you're allowed to put water in front of the fire on Shabbos. Even if you're trying to spread the coals, to be able to use the coals for the barbecue, for the siyum, even so you're allowed to. Why? Because that's the extra expression. Why do you need 4 halachas? A child lost at sea. If you go and ask and find out, or as a lady, you'll lose the child altogether. The pit, the child's not going to get lost. He's sitting in the pit. Nothing can possibly happen to him. The child is terrified at the bottom of the pit. Maybe you should sit next to the door and rattle nuts. And when the child hears the rattling of the nuts, he becomes happy. So you don't need to break the door. You need it. Even if the fire is in one chotzer, and you're putting it, and everybody in that chotzer is gone. There's nobody left in the entire neighborhood. But the problem is the fire is going to spread to the next one. And Mashi adds in the next neighborhood, there's little children and chaylim, and you can't evacuate them in time, even so it's mutter. So there's 4 chiddushim. There's a couple of halachas over here. One halacha, Mishvor brings, Rabbi brings it actually, is that if a child's locked in showers, this happened, a neighbor of mine once came, a child, I don't know why, they were in his bathroom and locked themselves in. And what happened was, we had to break down the door. The halacha is, you're allowed to break down the door, Mor says. That the Chazal held that's a sofek b'koach nefesh. That means, the Mishvor says, even if it's an Issa D'Oraisa, 99% of the time breaking down the door will not be an Issa D'Oraisa. It is very rare to break down the door, but Issa D'Oraisa. It's only if Sosam Nos Livnos, if what happened was the door frame was no good, and you were planning to knock the door frame down in order to rebuild it better, and the person locked themselves in the room, then make Maisa, you're allowed to do Issa D'Oraisa. But the Mishvor writes that if you can rattle nuts outside the door, and that calms the child down, you're mechuyev to do that and not break down the door. But that's only by Sudu, right? As I said, there's a huge machlekas of here. And again, if you look inside, Mishtabor brings this machlekas. It's a rare machlekas, but in London it's big machlekas. Is that the Gemara here tells us all kinds of scenarios of a person being mechal Shabbos to save a child, stuck in a pit and you're making a staircase. Lost at sea, you're catching a fish. A fire, you're trying to make coals. The question is, what does the Gemara mean? Does the Gemara mean that you're allowed to do it even though you're benefiting? That's the many person. Or that you're allowed to do it even if your main intention is because you want to catch fish. There are many poskim who hold that if your intention is to catch fish, it is forbidden. And then you have to find somebody else who's not interested in catching the fish. And it's only if, by the way, you're helping yourself. But to actually do it with full intention is forbidden. The Shmuel discussed it again, there's a bit halacha about it. And this, it can be dangerous, so that you have to not catch the fish. You have to make sure not to use the fish. No, so you're not allowed to use the fish. You're not allowed to benefit from it. That means you're not allowed to do it for intention. Says the Gemara, we don't go after roiv by pikuach nefesh, meaning even if the majority would say to us there's no chance of survival, for example, now in Miami, the majority chances are there's nobody alive. Nevertheless, we're still allowed to mechal Shabbos for the meal. What says like at Sola, that's right. Majority of cases, it's not pikuach nefesh. That's a very good example. What's the case? There's 9 Yid and 1 Goy. There's no Chiddush because there's majority Yidden. So of course you do pikuach nefesh. There's 90% of Yidden. Elo pago. It's 50-50. Says, well, that's also not a Chiddush. Something the Fosh is talking. Elo dikatisha kutu v'yisol echad. We're talking about there's 9 Goyim and 1 Yid, and let's say one of them gets trapped. We don't know which one it is. So you're allowed to save alidei because even though it's only 10% chance, we don't care for Shabbos. That's also obvious. The din of kavua is a very complicated one, which comes up in a number of places in Shas and Pesachim, but we're not going to go into it now. The basic idea is that when we know where the Issa is, for example, we know that a person went into the shop, we just don't know which shop he went to, then even if it's only one shop tray, 9 kosher, we say kavua mechza is 50-50. It's only when it's porush, when they're separated from the mokim asofbeg, and we go after roiv. In this particular case, 10 people in the courtyard, 9 of them go, one eat, and a brick fell on one of them. For some reason, we don't know which one it is. The question is, can we do pikuach nefesh? Of course we can, because it's kavua. Since it's kavua, it's 50-50. So Gemara says, they moved into another courtyard. Now the Tim called the Polish were Polish. We don't go after roiv. So if you've got, for example, a call out that somebody in Heaton Park hurt themselves, and you don't know if it's a Yid or Goy, so the answer is that you're allowed to be Mechal Shabbos. Why? Because even though the majority of the people in Heaton Park on Shabbos will be Goyim, but the fact is that we don't go after roiv. And then, for example, let's say a bridge of the Heaton Park, that's one of the bridges collapses and there's people underneath. Without to go, we don't go after roiv. In the first courtyard, you save them. But in the next courtyard, so you see that once they moved on to another one, we don't. When part of them removed themselves, not all of them, so then we go after a new kind of logic, and we say that we only go after the roiv, and therefore we do not do pikuach nefesh. The Pri Megadim again in Shulchan Ches and the Shav Yoshel to Shimon in Shah Dalad have a big avichus regarding this Gemara. Why over here suddenly are we machmim pikuach nefesh? That means the Gemara says over here, if you've got 10 people, 9 goyim and 1 yidam, and only 4 of them move into the next room, and in the next room, the whole room collapses, then we go after roiv and we do not undo it. This is a very strange halacha. The reason is, the Pri Megadim way the Pri Megadim says is, because since there was a kviyas in the first chotzer, we've established in the first chotzer that the need was probably there, and therefore we assume that he never went with a 4 into the next chotzer. It's a complicated kind of scenario, but in that exact scenario, says the Pri Megadim, you would not be allowed to mechal Shabbos. We talk about a Mishnah which discusses if a person finds a town where there's a mixture of Yidden and Goyim, and you find a baby in the street. Have you ever heard the babu cradle? You find a little baby. The question is what to do with it. If most of them are Goyim, it's a Goyim. But maybe saw. That's only to keep him alive, meaning to feed him, etc. But the yachsoi, to do yichos, to marry a kohen, if an adopted a child which has been lost cannot marry a kohen. It's a very important halacha. A kohen is not allowed to marry an asufi, it is called. That's the exact word. Asufi is a child that we have gathered from the street. We do not know the lineage. Can't marry. That you're allowed to save his life. And the Gemara understood at this stage that Shmuel was going on the end of it, where Rav Yisroel, which is mashma, that only if the majority in that town are Yidden. But if the majority are going, you're not even allowed to save his life. I said, well, it's going on the Reish on the first part statement. In Rav Kutim Kuti, if the majority are going, he's a good. Or Mashmul and Impekach Nefesh ain't no king. And regarding Pekuach Nefesh, that's not so. So if you find an adopted child in a town with a majority of Goyim, there's a small minority of Yidden, and this child is in the matter of danger, you're allowed to save that child's life, even on Shabbos, even through a Surah D'Oraisa, because we don't go after Roy. In Roy Kutim Nemai Hilchaseh, what nafkamina does it make to treat him like a Goy? Omar Popel Achila Nevelos, you're allowed to feed him Nevelos. In Roy Bisoli Sola Machs Nemai Hilchaseh, what nafkamina? Lachs Avidosim is missing to do Hashem Savida to him. Mechza Sola Nemai Hilchaseh. So very briefly, the halacha is, if my ox goes your ox, how much do I have to pay? The first 3 times I pay 50%. Once it's a mud, I pay 100%. If my ox goes a non-Jewish ox's, how much do I have to pay? Anybody know? No. That's by an Eved. If my ox goes a non-Jewish, nothing. You pay nothing. The reason being, I'm not so responsible on my ox. If a non-Jewish ox goes my ox, how much does he have to pay? Full from the very first time. Have you memorized those halachas? Again, he saw the first few times is 50%. After that, it's a full. A yid to a yid. A yid to a goy pays nothing. Goy to a yid always has to pay 100%. Now, the question is, what happens by this adopted child? So the Lord says, if our ox goes the ox of a child which was adopted, we don't know if it's Jewish or not, they connect to prove that's the seed that you should take. His ox called our ox. He pays 50%. Prove that I'm not Yid, and then you can get paid more than 50%. That means if you want to demand from an adopted child more than 50%, you're going to have to prove somehow that is not a Yid. What's the Mishnah say? Mishnah says we're not sure if it's a Yid or a Goy. We're not sure if it's alive or dead. We're not sure all this. It says, not only if it's a suffix, if it's there or not, and I feel suffix high, suffix mace, mefakhin. But let me buy suffix high, suffix mace, so I feel suffix kuti, suffix some mefakhin. The way the Rabbi explains is, we're talking about when in addition to one suffix, you've got many, many sfekas. So you don't know if he's Jewish or not. You don't know if he's alive or not. You don't know if he's there or not, because you don't know when the building collapsed if there was anybody inside the room. In all these cases, even if you add up all these sfekas, the sfek, the halacha is mechal Shabbos to save the Yid. If you find him alive, we take away the stone. The Suchai Pshita, if you see he's alive, what are you going to do? Stop taking away the rubble? Even if he's going to die in a couple of minutes, but the only thing you gain by removing the rubble is that he's going to live another extra few minutes. So, if he's dead, you don't do any more. No, then you're not allowed to. We're talking about removing the rubble is going to make him live a bit longer.
So you can see that, but removing it will make him bleed more because it's
no, so you don't.
So you don't know that.
Then you have to ask a doctor, and then you've got the shadows what to do.
If you're going to leave him there,
right, alive,
yes, he's going to stay alive by keeping him on, but he's going to die by taking off.
Then you have to ask the doctor. Well, you have to find out what's the medical thing. Then if he's dead, you leave him. What's the chiddush that if he's dead, you don't do Chilul Shabbos? If he's already dead, what's the purpose of doing Chilul Shabbos? Of course it's possible. The Tanya if a house is on fire, the only thing inside the house is a dead body. Oh, very good. If there's a house on fire and there's a dead body inside it, we're not allowed to move a dead body. What's the issue of moving a dead body? Muktzah. Which muktzah? Muktzah machbas gufoy, because you can't use it. So you're not allowed to, and better the person should be burnt rather than be over a double on muktzah. You're allowed to. Why? Yehuda permitted it. Why did he permit it? Now, the Gemara will explain in 1 second, and the reason is because if we don't permit it, he'll put out the fire. So over Issa Devaisa, so therefore we prefer to allow him to do muktzah than to put out the fire, which is Issa Devaisa. But over here, when it's under rubble, we prefer to leave the dead body there till after Shabbos, even though it's not Kvod Hameis. Can anybody tell me the difference? Why not? Why do we take it away? No, that's not the reason that the fire gets destroyed. Because what could happen? That's right. What could he do worse? By a fire, he could end up putting out the fire, which is a deraisa. Over here, what are you going to do? Going to undo the rubble? If I don't, so he'll have done the same as I did. Let's see. The person's worried by his dead body, or coming to put it out. What's he going to do worse? If I don't save him, it's the next person. I haven't done anything much worse. So by a person about to be burnt, we save him only for the sake that we don't want somebody else to put out the fire. By shaking over here, rather we leave the dead body there, and then we wait till after Shabbos to take him away from the rubble. We're up to Tonu Rabbanon. I'm sorry for going so fast. It's to do with a variety of circumstances that have come together.